right, so the Cleveland Browns do get their third win of the season against the Las Vegas Raiders in a final score of 24-10. Honestly, this was a game that wasn't even as close as the 24-10, like the 14-point margin that one describes. If you did watch this game, it was domination by the Browns, which is, as a Browns fan, I think we can all just kind of take a moment to accept that we don't get to witness games like that frequent enough, and, just take a second to kind of appreciate and soak in the fact that we were able to win a game in a fashion that we don't often get to experience. So, obviously a positive situation there. I am not someone who ever advocates for, on this channel tanking, and I just don't think it does anything good for, an NFL team, even though there is something to be said about having high draft capital to draft a quarterback. I just think that there's too much damage done to the kind of environment and the locker room whenever you're going through seasons where you're losing so many games to kind of de-emphasize winning, and it's really hard to get back to a place where there's an emphasis on winning again. So, of course, this was a step in the right direction for this team who's kind of been on a bit of a skid here, losing, I believe, like 3 or 4 straight, with Dillon Gabriel starting. But obviously, let's just go ahead and jump right in to kind of recapping this game. You got to start with the offense, and you have to start with Shedeur Sanders. It was Shedeur's start, and I want to just preface by giving him kind of a grade. In my opinion, Shedeur in this one was pretty good. I would say pretty good is an accurate way to describe the way Shedeur played in this game. I would give him probably a B-. I could be convinced of a B in this one. Look, he did enough to win the game. This wasn't a competitive Raiders team today. The defense completely dominated them. But he really, apart from one mistake, he really didn't throw like a pick six, and it's not like he fumbled and took 10 sacks and had all these costly errors that cost the Browns points on multiple occasions. He did what he had to do. He made the plays he needed to make and kept the game at the point where there was never really a question that we were going to win this one. So that said, yeah, a pretty good performance from Shedeur. If we look at the stats for Shedeur, they're not going to be eye-popping. Again, this was just not the game where he needed to go out there and throw 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. And it really never was going to be against this iteration of the Raiders, who just aren't able to score enough to be in a shootout. So, that said, he goes for 209 yards, 11 for 20, so just over 50%. What is that? 55% passing. Obviously, averaging 10.5 yards per attempt or per completion, and then obviously the touchdown and the interception to go along with that. Overall, he had an 87.3 passer rating. So, that kind of follows suit with the pretty good grade that I'm giving him. Without looking at the tape, it's hard to really give a true grade, but just kind of on the TV broadcast and watching the game live, I thought he was pretty good. So definitely a good start for Shedeur. I think the game could have gone, and I envisioned, honestly, the game going worse for him than it did. So keeping that in mind, it's hard not to be at least a little bit happy and, excited to see how Shedeur can build on this performance. And hopefully he gets the opportunity to do that, which we'll get into later on in the video. But I thought, he made plays in this game that Dillon Gabriel wouldn't be able to make. Obviously, the 52-yard throw kind of off his back foot, which one of the things we all said is he didn't have an NFL-type arm, or at least not a top-tier NFL-type arm. But to me, that was a rope down the field, and it seemed like he could probably throw it even further than that. But including that one, as well as the play where he kind of got out of the pocket and hit Jerry Jeudy on the play that, of course, Jerry Jeudy is, God knows what is going on in that man's head on that play, and obviously he fumbles, but that was a great play from Shedeur. We haven't seen a Browns quarterback really be able to extend plays like that and finish plays. It's something we thought we were going to get out of Deshaun, and we never did. And to see Shedeur be able to make a couple plays in a game that, the first one obviously led to a touchdown. The second one probably would have led to, at the very least, 3 points, but hopefully a touchdown if Jerry Jeudy, is on if his brain's even on the football field at that time. So yeah, it's exciting to see a quarterback make plays like that. Regardless, take the name off the jersey. I just thought it was fun to see any Browns quarterback go out there and make some winning type plays like that. And you saw it with Myles Garrett's reaction after that 50-yard throw. That's something that we haven't seen enough here in Cleveland. So yeah, intriguing stuff. I would say I'm intrigued by Shedeur's performance today. And let's all just hope that he does get the opportunity to continue to start games for this team and hopefully build on it. Because that's one thing we have to keep in mind. This is a guy who he is a rookie. We've all talked so much about Shedeur all year long, and I think in that we kind of forget the fact that this was his first start in the NFL, and throwing 210 yards and a touchdown and a pick, like that's pretty baseline for any quarterback to be doing in their first NFL start. And needless to say, he could easily build on that in the following weeks and continue hopefully to get the completion percentage higher and stack on more yards, more touchdowns, and hopefully erase some of those silly picks like we saw today. So yeah, that's kind of where all I have on Shedeur. I don't think there's a ton to take away from this game. We only saw him throw the ball 20 times, which I think was the recipe in this one. But from what we did see, positive. So we'll see what happens, in this coming week and in the press conferences with Kevin and the offensive staff to see if he'll continue to start games or what direction they're going to head into at the quarterback position. But at the very least, Shedeur did not slam the door closed for himself. But I also don't think he pushed the door wide open to where there's no way they return to Dylan Gabriel. So yeah, offense, I thought, to me, the offense this was one of the better games, which is kind of sad. I mean, they weren't spectacular. They scored 24 points and had some short field positions. But if we're being honest with ourselves, this was one of the better offensive performances we've seen this team have all season. And it's against a Raiders team who, to be honest, they're not a good team, but the main reasons the Raiders are a bad football team aren't actually, defensive situations. It's more about the offense there and their lack thereof in offense, really, and ability to be competitive on that side of the ball. Similar with us, I don't think the Raiders have as good of a defense as us, but their defense isn't terrible. They've been in some games, just like we have, where it's low scoring and the offense just isn't able to score enough points. So with that, I think it's kind of impressive that to go out there and look at least presentable as an offense, which is not something we've been able to do enough times this season, frankly. So yeah, I would give the offense. I think I would give the offense as a whole, honestly, on par with Shedeur. So I would give him a B- to a B. I would say a B- for the offense because there still was too many illegal formation penalties and a couple holding penalties, drive killers, things like this. And there was that one particular drive, and I believe it was the third quarter where, Shedeur and Judkins had kind of the offense moving down the field, and then we saw back-to-back penalties on the offense. Really, the offensive line, I believe they both were, and illegal formation type penalties. So you can't do these things like this. It's just a drive killer. That was a spot where The Browns were threatening to score a touchdown and kind of put the game out of reach at that point. So we see this happen way too many times, with Kevin as the head coach. So I can't go much higher than a B-. I don't even think they got over 300 total yards in offense, but like I said, it wasn't a game where they needed to have a ton of yards. The defense was just that good. So I don't think there was many risky, like the play calling was not there to have the opportunity to really have like over 400 yards of offense in this one. It was just pretty conservative, and there was definitely some fourth downs where I thought we could have went for it, and we decided to punt it, which makes sense in a game like this. But yeah, so the offense was about a B-. The one note I do have with the offense that I'm not a huge fan of, and I'll explain why. It is the Wildcat situation. I do enjoy that we have the creativity and the ability to run the Wildcat, and maybe do some things building off of that with maybe like a Wildcat into like some sort of variation play where, who knows, like that's for Kevin to Kevin and Tommy Rees to draw up some sort of variations off that play. But I think we used it way too many times in this one. And it's not like it was super effective. I haven't seen the numbers on it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was averaging like 3 yards a carry on the Wildcat. So like if you're not averaging 5 yards a carry with it, like what, to me, you shouldn't be going to it more than a couple times here and there on goal line situations. I thought we pulled it out at times, kind of just in between the 20s, where like leave your quarterback on the field, man. You don't see teams across the NFL out there running Wildcat on their own 35-yard line on like a 1st and 10. It just doesn't happen. So that's where I'm like, okay, I'm just not really sure what's going on there. Is it a lack of trust in Shedeur? I don't know if that's, if it is, I don't think it's fair, because Shedeur wasn't having like a shocking game. And yeah, I just think that we went back to that well a little bit too many times in this one, and it'll be interesting to see either as maybe the confidence is building in Shedeur, or they go back to Dylan, if that's something that they continue to do. I personally hope that the frequency of those plays definitely drops, as we move along into close to the end of the season, and hopefully next year, when our offense is hopefully better, we don't have to rely on like the Wildcat, because we can be productive out of shotgun or, empty and be like a normal NFL offense. Let's hope. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about the offense. I did want to circle back to Shedeur because I remembered one point that I forgot to address. For me, watching Shedeur, the one thing as I was watching him, I was taking note of was the drifting and in those 10 to 15 plus yard sacks that we saw him do in the Rams game, and he did a lot in college, and we saw him do a couple times in the Ravens game. Tonight, I didn't see that today, this evening. There was a couple instances, and that's it. Maybe 2 instances where I think he kind of caught himself, and you could tell he really did hone in on ditching that pattern where he does, dance around back there and finds himself in these really negative positions whenever he can't find an option down the field. And I think he caught himself a couple of times today and either threw the ball away or just took, climbed back up in the pocket and took like a shorter sack. So I thought that was positive. I think that is the most important thing with Shedeur. If he can get that aspect and throw that away out of his game, like get rid of it, because you can't do that in the NFL. If he can do that, I think he can be an effective player. Like he makes plays like we saw today, and he did it throughout his whole entire college career, where he's able to, make something out of nothing. And that is promising in the NFL. But you have to get rid of those long dancing around type sacks where it's like a true drive killer and just bad things happen. So, like I said, he was able to do that. So that was positive. I thought that was very encouraging, and that's also part of the reason why I think, he gets a solid like B grade. Definitely good to see him learn from his first appearance in the Ravens game, and I think he can continue to even learn even more as we build on into further and further into his shortened rookie season here. Anyway, I do want to shift to talk about the defense, because the offense was okay to pretty good. The defense was spectacular in this game, like dominant. This was one of those games where you're watching this defense and you're really kind of sick to your stomach, because we do have that 2023 type defense where we were able to win, 11, 12 games, and we just don't have the offense, because this defense deserves to be a playoff contender type football team. I mean, they go out, I think they had 10 sacks today. They were flirting with the franchise record, and I think every single time Geno Smith, like, I need to listen to an interview, some of the press games, post-game press conference stuff for Geno, just because I want to hear like what he has to say about the beating that he just went through. Because every single time he dropped back, I mean, the guy if it wasn't Myles, it was Mason Graham. If it wasn't Mason Graham, it was Malik Collins, and if it wasn't Malik Collins, it was Isaiah McGuire, or the list goes on and on of just these waves of these defensive linemen that we have on this Browns roster. And the Raiders were firsthand experiencing that this evening. So dominant performance by the defense. Obviously Myles had another, I think he had a 3 sack. Yep. Myles had another 3 sack game. So what does that make it? In the past 4 games, I think he has 13 sacks. Like, he's entering that conversation where it's like he's without a doubt one of the best pass rushers of all time. And I think he can, at this point, the thing with Myles, he doesn't even have to get a sack per game to end the year in order to break the sack record. So for me, it's not if he's going to break the sack record, it's how high is that number going to be? Like, can he get it north of 25 sacks this season? I mean, the current form that he's in, and like we still have teams like the Titans and the Steelers are a team that Myles tends to play really well at, especially at home. So he's going to have games where he's going to have opportunities to get a ton of sacks. So it'll be interesting to see how that's kind of the main story to end off the Brown season here, apart from Shedeur. Like, excuse me, how many sacks can Myles get? Can he push somewhere like 30? Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, the defense is spectacular. D-line is dominant. Mason Graham, to me, has built on, after the first half of the season, wasn't the most impressive. I thought I was a little down on Mason. I was like kind of questioning, did we pick him and, did we reach on him a little bit with the 5th overall pick? And I think he has now stacked 4 or 5 really, really good performances back to back to back. On the latter part of the season here. So that's super encouraging for a guy. This is the D tackle position is one of those positions where it just takes some time for these guys to really turn into these super impactful type players. So I'll be really excited next season to see like what type of shape Mason enters in. Like, can he get some more muscle on? I think that's going to be key for him, because it still looks like he needs to pack on some muscle. Can he do that? And, can he be even more of a force on the actual football field? But yeah, really, really positive game from him. He was constantly, just constantly in Geno's face, wreaking havoc for them. Also, a great run defender. So this is the type of performance that we were hoping to get out of Mason Graham, with that 5th overall pick. So that's a great sign. I think Browns fans are starting to notice him a little bit, and it's starting to become more and more clear that he could be a great player for us. But, I could go into every single player on this defense. Everyone played good today. It was a great defensive game. And yeah, it's an A+ for them. A+ for the defense. The only thing they didn't do was get like a pick six, or they didn't force. I think the only turnover I believe was that last fumble that Myles, the strip sack on Geno. So only thing they didn't do was force a ton of turnovers, but we didn't need it in this one. So it's not like they were getting uber aggressive out there trying to force mistakes. Just a dominant performance by them. So yeah, overall, Browns, good game, good win, positive performance. I think I have a couple takeaways and things to talk about to wrap up the reaction pod here. And I'm going to start by saying that it's clear to me that the football team hasn't given up on Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff, apart from maybe Jerry Jeudy, who I'll talk about Jerry in kind of his disaster of a season so far, and just the mess that he's created for himself here in Cleveland so far this season, and hopefully he's able to bounce back, because I do think there's talent in that player, but he just hasn't been able to put it together and build off that successful season last year. So, but apart from him, I think the rest of the team is really, really locked in and still fighting really hard. And I think it helps to have, a young quarterback like Shedeur, who there's a lot of excitement around and the locker room seems to like. But you still have to give credit to Kevin and Tommy Rees and, Jim Schwartz and that coaching staff for a year that is, from a playoff standpoint, all but over. And it's not even Thanksgiving yet. It's impressive that this team is still able to go out there and dominate another NFL team, and it's not something we've seen in previous Brown seasons where we've been bad like this. So I think it's a silver lining for Kevin, and if he can continue to stack a few games in the latter half of the year here, maybe push the win total up to like 6, I think he's really going to have a good chance to return as the head coach. And I know there's a whole argument to be had with that situation. But I still do think the bottom line for Kevin is I still do think he has enough time, to end this season to prove that he should still be the coach of this team. And that's in Jimmy Haslam's eyes. I don't think Jimmy knows what he's going to do. And I think he would prefer to not fire Kevin. But for a while, and we're not out of trouble yet, but for a while there, it was looking like Kevin wasn't going to give Jimmy an option but to fire him. So that's kind of what we'll see at the end of the year. Can Kevin save his job here? And I think Shedeur might be the only real shot he has at doing that. So that leads into the last thing I want to talk about. I talked about Shedeur's performance today, and apologize if you can hear the train coming in the back here. I live next to train tracks, and if you guys haven't heard them on my videos, they get pretty loud sometimes. But anyway, I talked about Shedeur's performance. It was pretty good. But to me, the more interesting thing in reflection on this game is what is Kevin going to do at the quarterback position? We know Kevin likes Dylan Gabriel. So to me, if it was only up to Kevin, I would be shocked if this performance was enough for Kevin to not go back to Dylan Gabriel against the 49ers next week and really to end the year. I don't see Kevin, viewing this performance as enough of an outlier and head and shoulders above what Dylan offers to bench the perceived starting quarterback who is Dylan Gabriel. Like, to me, these are both rookie quarterbacks who you drafted late. And there shouldn't, like, one really should not have a set in stone perspective advantage over the other, like we have seen. But it's just the way it is. Like, Kevin does like Dylan more than Shedeur. It's been that way since day one of training camp. So knowing that, I think there is a legitimate chance that Kevin will, and I haven't listened to the press conference, the post game yet, so there's a chance you guys are watching this video and Kevin has already said that he's going back to Dylan. I don't know yet. If so, we'll obviously talk about that in, you know, the future pods coming up this week. That said, yeah, I think it's still 50-50, man. Like, if it was up to Kevin, I think it's Dylan, but the owner of this team is Jimmy Haslam, and we know what Jimmy Haslam, like, we know he said he wants to see both of these guys get a chance. Well, he saw Dylan Gabriel get a chance, and it wasn't too good, and now he's only seen one game of Shedeur, and there was some bright spots, and we won the game by 14 points. So, like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I think, and I believe we'll probably find out on Wednesday. I'd be shocked if Kevin gives us an actual answer in the post game. But it'll be interesting, to say the least. If I were to tell you guys what I would do, it's the easiest decision in the world. Like, at the very minimum, you're walking away from this game watching Shedeur saying Shedeur can make plays that Dylan Gabriel cannot make. Like, period blank. He cannot make them. Yes, Dylan Gabriel maybe is a little bit better, you know, playing, you know, in structure, in the system, this, that, and the other. But he does not have the ability to make those NFL potential franchise quarterback, like, difference-making plays that Shedeur, we saw him make, you know, a couple of them today. And to me, that's enough where I'm like, okay, let's just give him the season's over anyway. We're not going to the playoffs. We need to know if we need to draft a quarterback with our draft capital coming up next season. Let's just, you know, hand the keys to Shedeur for the rest of the season, because Dylan simply, he got his opportunity. He didn't do enough with it, frankly. And we saw some enticing things from Shedeur. So, like, I want to reiterate the fact that I am not a Shedeur, like, I am not a Shedeur stan and he can do no wrong. That's not the type of guy I am. Like, that's not the type of Browns fan I am. I have always been, I just want the Browns to get the best possible quarterback and to not have to worry about that goddamn position for the next 10 years. So I don't care if it's Joe Smith. I don't care if Myles Garrett starts playing quarterback for us. I don't care. Well, as long as he can pass rush too. He needs to do both. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care who the quarterback is, man. I just want somebody who can play well for this team. And to me, it could be more obvious that Shedeur has the higher ceiling, and there's a whole conversation to be had there with, like, okay, why? Knowing after one game, it's so clear that Shedeur does have a higher ceiling. Why have we wasted so much time with Dylan? And I'm going to get into that later in the week. It's too much to talk about in today's podcast, but check back later on as we do progress throughout the week, because I have some interesting conversations to talk about when it comes to that, and kind of the coaching staff and the front office and how they've handled the quarterback situation here in Cleveland. But let me know what you guys would do, you know, if you were in Kevin's position. I think most of you will probably say Shedeur, and, you know, there'll be a slight percentage of you that will say Dylan Gabriel, and that's kind of how this thing rolls. But hey, we'll see what happens, man. Overall, a win's a win. I'm never going to complain about a win. It was fun to watch the Browns go out there and beat a team pretty bad. It's something we haven't seen near enough over the past, I guess, 15 years. So more than that, 20 years, 25 years. Like, it's just not something we see enough here. So yeah, it was a fun one. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the game. Like I said, I'm going to have a ton more content coming out this week, kind of talking about some of these things more in depth. I'm going to get a chance to kind of look at the tape over the next couple days to really get a better idea of how Shedeur performed in this one. I think I know some of the areas that he missed guys on. I think I know, some of the plays he made and kind of reflecting on that. But like I said, once we get into the tape, we'll have a much clearer picture of all that. So stay tuned. Drop a like if you did enjoy. I will see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.